reason why Sister B.I. invited a doctor to give a talk on this topic is because she's hoping that I will share my personal experience as a doctor. So we are not going to just touch on the Buddha's teaching. I'm also going to share with you some of my personal experience in my own personal life, as well as patients that I have seen. You know, of course, I will not tell you their names, patient confidentiality, but I will share with you some interesting cases that will hopefully help us to understand a little bit more about the kind of illness that we have. And we are not just talking about physical illnesses, okay? Because, in fact, I'm seeing more and more patients with emotional illnesses and mental illnesses. Mental illnesses here, I don't refer to just people who go mad, but depression, you know, under stress, things like that, anxieties, okay? So we'll talk a lot more about that. And there's a reason why we will talk a lot more about that. I will tell you later. Right. Now, having talked about suffering as the or sickness as the first part of the Buddha's teaching, which involves the first noble truth, then it goes to show that since sickness is also suffering, the cause of sickness must be the second noble truth, which is craving. Because the Buddha says craving is the cause of suffering, and disease of sickness is suffering. So craving must be a cause of our diseases. When we look at it analytically or in a more detailed manner, then actually it is true. We crave for a lot of things in life. For example, let's take a look at food. A lot of people like to take too much, eat too much. And because they take too much, they crave for too much food, they grow fat. And obesity now is a major illness in this world, especially in the Western world. Okay. Some people like to take sweet things, so they make their diabetes worse, or they make their diabetes uncontrollable, and that leads to all kinds of illnesses, complications as well, including damages to the kidney, which is one of the worst complications ever for the diabetes. In fact, we all know, as doctors, we all know that if you have diabetes and you don't control it, within 20 years, your kidney will fail and you will be going on dialysis. If we already know this, then we should know from early on that we need to control what we eat. Okay. Some people like salty food. Salty food gives rise to high blood pressure. If you take too much salty food over a long period of time, then you get high blood pressure. Again, the complication of high blood pressure is many. You can get stroke. You can get heart attack or heart failures. Okay. You can also get kidney problems. One of the complications of high blood pressure is kidney failure as well, just like diabetes. Again, you will get it not immediately, but maybe 20 years later if it is not controlled. If it is controlled, then you don't have the problem. That's why we treat, to control it. Okay. Then there are also people who love fatty food. Nasi lemak, what else do you have? Bak kut teh, you know. And this fatty food gives rise to high cholesterol in the blood. And high cholesterol in the blood can block blood vessels, and that will give rise to heart attack again or stroke. Okay, so all this craving for food is a source of our illnesses, physical illnesses. Okay, hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, kidney failures, all this, if you look and trace back, it's all due to our craving for food. Not entirely, because there are also some genetic component to it. Sometimes if your parents have it, you are likely to get it. Not your fault. Okay? But by and large, we can control our craving, and so we can control the levels of diabetes, for example, or sugar or salt that we take in. Okay, so craving. if we look at it from this aspect, this perspective, is the cause of our physical illnesses. Okay, but there are also cravings in other ways. Okay, we not just crave for food, we also crave for a certain lifestyle. In our mind, to be successful in life, there is a certain level of achievement we need to get. For example, we think that to be successful, we need to have a big house, maybe a bungalow or a semi-D. We need to drive big cars, BMW, Mercedes, I don't know, whatever new that we have, continental cars. Maybe we need to wear branded clothes together with some branded accessories, with some branded makeups. These are our vision of what a successful person is. Of course, it need not necessarily be true. Okay, but we crave for it anyway because that has been imprinted in our mind. That is what a picture of success is. So in a way, we crave success, and when we crave this kind of success, we work ourselves to the ground to achieve it. We have no time to look after our health. We have no time to look after our actually emotional and mental health. And I see more and more patients who are overstressed from work. So they end up with anxiety, they end up with depression, they end up with a lot of worries. And these are mental and emotional illnesses as well. Okay, all as a result of our craving for certain things. Okay, so the Buddha was right when he says that craving is the cause of all suffering, including illnesses. Okay, we just need to look at it from a different perspective, and then we can understand it. The Buddha's teaching actually, when you listen to the Buddha's teaching, it can be very simple, and it can be very, very deep. And then, in the third noble truth, the Buddha says that there is a state, there is a cure for suffering, and that state is nibbana. Okay, in other words, it's a state that is free from change. We are now living in a world where change is definite, but there is a state that you will not be bothered by change. Okay, that is the state of nibbana. It is a state, it is not a place or anything else. And the Buddha also says that there is a way to reach that state, and he called that way the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay, now in the Noble Eightfold Path, the Buddha starts with right understanding and then right thoughts. And then he also talked about right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And he divided this into three aspects. The wisdom aspect, which is panya, which is the first two, right understanding and right thoughts. And then the morality or sila aspect, which is right speech, right actions, and right livelihood. And then finally the samadhi or concentration aspect. Okay, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. As Buddhists, we are quite good, I think, with right speech, right actions, and right livelihood. We are quite aware of the fact that when we talk, we need to be very careful what we say. And we also know that what we do affect not only ourselves but other people. So we also try to be very careful with what we do. Of course, we also try to choose a kind of livelihood that is in accordance with the Buddha's teaching. Right? But I think that is where most of us end our awareness or end our mindfulness. We don't take very good care of our thoughts. But the Buddha says, mind is the forerunner of all states. In other words, it is from the mind that everything else starts. So if we want to take care of our speech, or we want to take care of our deeds or actions, then perhaps the best thing to do is to take care of our thoughts. Because from our thoughts, it's where that's where it leads to our speech and our action. So if we begin from the root, then everything will fall into place. But that is something, why I said that we end right there is because that is the area of thoughts is something most people don't bother too much about. Yet that is the most important thing. In fact, the Buddha's teaching, the core of the Buddha's teaching is all about mind cultivation, mental cultivation. And the reason why he spends so much time on mental cultivation is because that is the key. That is the key to end your suffering. That is the key to end your illnesses. Because the Buddha says that of all the illnesses in the world, the majority of these illnesses arise from the mind. In fact, you can almost trace every one of it to go back to the mind. And the scientific world and the medical world are just beginning to understand that and are just beginning to realize the truth of that statement. We are beginning to understand that our mind, once a certain thought arises, whether it is positive or negative, will create a chain reaction. A chain reaction in the sense that when we have a thought, that thought triggers off some neurotransmitter in the brain cells, and trigger off some electrical charges in the brain cells. And that neurotransmitter and electrical charges went on as the first line of communication in the body. From there, it goes off to trigger off hormones in the body that moves into the bloodstreams. And these hormones are chemicals that goes to each and every single cell in our body. And there, at the end, where the cells are, the final message is sent to the cell. So, if your thought begins with a good thought, the final message to your cell is a good message, a positive message. And the response in the cellular area is positive. So in other words, what happens is that it ends up, the cell becomes healthier, the immune system becomes stronger, and there is no sickness appearing in the cell. On the other hand, if you start off with the negative thoughts, the same whole reaction, chain reaction occurs. Neurotransmitters, then the hormones, and then it goes all the way to the cells in every organ in our body. And negative changes occur. So that's how you get illnesses. When you have a lot of negative thoughts, when our thoughts are predominantly negative, then illnesses occur. And the illnesses that occur in certain place actually is symbolic of the negative thoughts that you have predominantly in your mind. Okay, I will talk about that in one of the examples I give. Okay, maybe I will tell you the story now. I have this patient. She was in her mid-30s. She came to see me one fine day because she was having asthma, wheezing, difficulty breathing. I think she was about 36 years old at that time, quite some year back. Okay, and so when we listened to her lungs with the stethoscope, we could hear all the signs that definitely tell us this is asthma. This is asthma. Of course, being a doctor treating physical illnesses, I gave her all the medications for asthma. Inhalers, tablets, whatever we have, I gave her. And then I say, okay, you take this medicine, you go back, in a few weeks' time you come back, we will review your progress, see your response. Okay. About 2 weeks later, she came back, still asthmatic, no improvement. Okay, never mind, I will change the medicine, stronger. That's what we always say. I'll give you a stronger one. Okay. Because patient likes to hear you are doing something more. If I say, I'll give you the same one. Huh? Same one, didn't work all. Okay. So, something else stronger. So she went back again, and 2 weeks later she came back. Dr. Ong, no change. Still asthmatic. This goes on for several times. She was quite patient with me. She came back several times despite the fact that she has no improvement. I think I must be a very lucky doctor. Anyway, she came back. And then one of the times she came back was in the afternoon. You see, my practice is that in the morning I'm very busy. In the afternoon I'm quite free. Not many patients come in the afternoon. So that day she came in the afternoon. So when she came in the afternoon, and there were not many patients. In fact, there was not even one patient then at that time, because she was the earliest one to come in the afternoon. So we managed to have some time to chit chat and talk. And I asked her, was there anything that happened before your asthmatic attack? Now we got the answer. She said, yes, 2 weeks before my asthma arose, I had a miscarriage. A miscarriage, huh? What happened? She said, well, I was in my early pregnancy about 6 weeks or so. And then one fine day I had cramp in the stomach, and then the miscarriage happened in the night. We went to the hospital, we were admitted, I was admitted, and then they did an ultrasound, and they saw the fetuses out already. So I had a DNC done. I said, oh yeah, how did you feel? That's all I said. Oh, how did you feel? She started crying. She started crying because she felt so guilty. She thought it was her fault that she had a miscarriage. I think every mother is like that. Something happened to their children. The first person they blame is themselves. So, miscarriage, it must be my fault. So she had this strong sense of guilt. But what makes the situation even worse was that she said, I couldn't talk about this with my husband because my husband refused to listen. My husband refused to talk about the event. Obviously, the husband is not ready to face the fact. You see? But she needed somebody to talk to about her feelings. And the person she's supposed to be able to talk to couldn't listen to her. So she had a lot of guilt. She had a lot of pain inside her. And she couldn't do anything about it. Until that afternoon when somebody innocently asked the question and everything spilled out. She cried and she cried. And I used a lot of tissue paper from the Kleenex box that afternoon. But it made her feel good that she was finally able to talk about this pain and the guilt. And of course, I assure her that it was not her fault that she had a miscarriage. It could be that the fetus was not ready to be born. Okay? In fact, many a time, fetuses abort on their own because they are not ready. And in fact, many of this time, when they abort very early, and the mother, who may not even know that she's pregnant, she thought the period just came. Okay, so a lot of times it's like that. But because you think the period just came, you have no feeling of guilt because you didn't even know you were pregnant. Okay, but a lot of it happened like that. So I told her, if you had not known it and it had been aborted silently like that, would you have felt guilty? She said, no, then because I wouldn't know. She said, actually, that's the problem. Now you blame yourself because you know already. But it's not true. Some fetuses abort because they're just not ready for it. It's a natural way of excreting themselves. Rather than they come out with a lot of deformities. Okay, they are not healthy fetuses, they will abort by themselves. Okay. But the real surprise was 1 month later. She came back to see me. And then she said, Dr. Ong, I'm cured. I've got no more asthma. I said, you took the medicine? No, I didn't touch the medicine. I was cured after I talked to you that day. Amazing, isn't it? It shows how powerful our mind is in influencing our body. This example clearly taught me how powerful our mind is. So powerful that it can turn our physical body into illness. That day, I was convinced of the Buddha's teaching of how powerful the mind is, and that the mind is truly the forerunner of all states. Because now I see it on my with my own eyes. Okay. Before that, it's all just talk lah. Mind is the forerunner of all states. Yes, I understand that, but now I truly believe it. See, so that is how powerful our mind is. Mind is the forerunner of all states. But not just that. The Buddha also gave us a few clues of how we can use this mind in a proper way. He said that if you think good things results. If you think bad things result. Basically, he is talking about the law of cause and effect, the law of karma. Okay. Well, again, we listen and we could say, I understand that. But that's all. We go back and then we don't do anything about our thoughts again. Because, like I said, we are good Buddhists when it comes to speech and action, because these are things that not only we try to control, because other people can see us. When we say bad things, other people can know. When we do something bad, other people can see. But when we think negative things, nobody knows. I hope none of you here can read my mind. Okay? So we can hide behind that invisibility. Nobody can know what we think. At least we don't think anybody can already have this ability to read minds. Although there are some people who can, Anyway, that's where we lack effort. We lack effort in training our mind, which is, in fact, to me now, is the most important thing as a Buddhist. You have to start with the mind, because when you start with the mind, then your emotions gets better, your physical body gets better. Okay, and you can and as a doctor now, with all the research going on, I can know how the mind affects the emotion and how the emotion affects the body. Okay, and this is true. It's no more question marks. It's something scientific already, accepted in mainstream science. Okay. Now, why is it that because despite the fact that we know our mind is so important, we still behave the same way, we still do things that are negative and this and that. And to get to that answer, we need to look at cravings again. We need to go back and analyze cravings and know what cravings is. Craving actually is a desire, right? And it's a desire to chase after what we perceive as real or as the truth or as good. What we perceive only, it may not be good, but we perceive it that way. So it's a belief that we are chasing after. We crave for a belief that we are chasing after. And the reason why we crave for it is because that belief has long ago been imprinted in our mind. Whether it was from our past experience in this lifetime or from many, many lifetimes ago, that belief has been imprinted in our mind, and it has been imprinted in a subconscious way outside of our conscious awareness. That is why it's so difficult to recognize it, to identify it. Because if we are conscious of it, we can easily remove it. Unfortunately, we are not conscious of it. This is done unconsciously. And so, we actually learn this state. And a good example of this is the little baby elephant that is tied to a stick. I think perhaps you have heard of this story, but I will share with you anyway. In Thailand, they have a lot of elephants. Okay, they use the elephants there for a lot of work. When the elephant is still a small little baby elephant, they tie the elephant with a big rope on one of the elephant's leg, and the other end of the rope they tie to a stake, and then they hammer the stick into the ground tightly. Because the baby elephant is still small, it cannot pull the stick away, right? So, even though it tried at first, it couldn't move. He felt that it's tight there already. Several times they do that, and they finally give up. They don't pull anymore at the rope. Then the elephant grow up to become adult elephant. Still, the trainer just tie the leg to the stick on the ground. And the elephant doesn't even try to pull the stick out, believing that if he does it, he will not be able to pull it out. It has been conditioned from young that he cannot escape. That is how our mind is conditioned. Okay. Another example of this is a famous example in the scientific community. It's called Pavlovs Experiment. This scientist called Pavlov, he demonstrated the effect of conditioning the mind by training the dog to salivate. What he does is this. First he ring a bell. Then he gives the dog the food in a bowl. And the dog happily wag his tail and then salivate because of the food in front. So every time he does that, ring the bell first, then give the food. Then the dog will respond. Eventually, after some training, some conditioning, what he does is, he just ring the bell, no food. The dog will still wag his tail, salivate. No food, but it will salivate anyway because of the bell. So that is another example of conditioning. Of course, this type of conditioning is gradual conditioning. You have to reinforce it many times. Then it gets conditioned, it gets imprinted into the subconscious mind. Okay. But we can also be conditioned by just a single event, a single act, a very emotional one. Then that event could be imprinted into our mind, and it becomes something that drives us. This one, I will share with you my personal experience. Right. Some of you may remember May 13, 1969, the racial riot in Malaysia. Okay. At that time, I was a little boy. Yes. On that day, May 13, the government extended a curfew because of the racial riots. And where I stay, there were some soldiers patrolling in their patrol cars and in their jeeps. Now, being a young boy, I was curious because I've never seen a soldier before. So when I heard a car coming, and I knew that there were some soldiers in it, I quickly ran out into the middle of the road to take a look at the soldier. Being an innocent child, I didn't know the danger, because the car that came by was a jeep with a soldier driving it, and behind the jeep, it was an open jeep. There was a submachine gun with another soldier holding it. When I ran out, my mother panicked, so she screamed. And the soldier who was holding the submachine gun was looking elsewhere. When he heard the sound, he turned with the submachine gun pointing right at me. When I saw the machine gun, I froze. Somehow I knew that was dangerous. So my mother quickly ran out of the house, grabbed me, pulled me back in. But that shock of seeing the soldier with the submachine gun pointing the gun at me was enough to imprint the fear of uniformed men. From then onward, whenever I see a policeman, I start to shake. For no reason. Not that I have done something wrong, but I will just shake. So much so that when I see, let's say I'm walking in town, and I see the policeman there, and that's where I want to go, I go the other way. Just to avoid the uniformed man. That fear was already imprinted. But as I grow up, fortunately I was aware that this is an irrational fear. There's no reason why I should be fearful. it was irrational. So I worked on it. And eventually I was able to overcome it. Nowadays, when I see a policeman, there's no more fear lah. But I had to work hard. I had to actually face my fear. To purposely, when I see the policeman there, walk past him. But each time I walk past him, very fearful. But the more I do that, the more I realize nothing to fear. And soon I relearn something, nothing to fear. So I walk past without any more fear. So I have to replace that fear with a new belief that there's nothing to fear about policemen. Okay? So this is what happened to us. This is why we crave for things. It is conditioned into us because of our past behavior, of our past experience, either in this life or in a previous life. Okay? And the same way we crave for food, we crave for a certain lifetime, is because it has all been conditioned into our mind. Who says that you need a big house, a big car, and all the nice things in order to be able to live a decent life? The Buddha didn't say so. But who says? The TV, the media, the newspaper, all the people who are trying to sell you these stories, they're the one who tells you and who has imprinted that into your mind. And so you're convinced that yes, in order for me to be successful or seen as successful, this is what I should have. But we don't have to. In fact, the Buddha's message is for us to unclutter the mind. Don't put too much things into the mind. We need very little to be happy. I know of one person who, if he gets his father's inheritance, he will be one of the richest men. Yet he chose not to. He chose to renounce and become a monk. Because he knows his priorities and because he truly understands the Buddha's teaching well. And of course he become a Buddhist monk. Okay, so sometimes we have to recondition ourselves. Okay, and in fact, if you want to be free of a lot of sickness, this is what you need to do. You have to recondition your mind. Right. Now, I can also tell you of a story of a nun who had cancer, and she was able to cure herself of that cancer. I think some of you may have heard of her or may have read a little booklet that was published based on her stories. I'm not sure anyone have heard of it. Anyone? No. There was a nun who had cancer. I can't remember what type of cancer she had. But the moment she was told she had cancer, of course she will go to the doctor, get the diagnosis, get the treatment and all that things. But some cancers are not amenable to treatment, not in the Western medication anyway. But what she decided to do when she knew that she had cancer was that, because I have only a short time to live, I will devote all my time to meditation, improving myself. The way she thinks is like this: if I meditate, if I purify my mind, perhaps I can cure my cancer. But even if I don't cure my cancer, the act of meditation would have purified my mind so much that I will not be so affected by the illness, and at least I could be reborn perhaps into a more fortunate state next time. Okay, so she spent her time meditating, and she meditate, day and night she meditate. She make it a habit even in her daily work to be doing things slowly in mindfulness, meditation. I think after it wasn't short time, it was a long time, but she has made meditation a regular part of her life. After about half a year or 1 year, I can't remember exactly, she went back to see the doctor, and to her surprise, her own surprise, the doctor said the cancer is no more there. What did you do? She didn't do anything, she says. I just meditated. I just keep my mind pure. I don't think even about the illness. I don't even think about the cancer that I have. I just make sure that every time I think or I'm aware of a thought, that thought is a pure thought, is a good thought. Okay. And that's all I did. And to her surprise, the cancer was gone. Of course, the doctor says, oh, a miracle has happened. And it's true, a miracle has happened because the mind has changed. And when she looked back, she realized that before she had the cancer, she was like everybody else, worrying about this, worrying about that. House leaking, good house, nice house leaking, also headache. Nice big cars, car spoil, also headache. Then have to think about children, this and that, all kinds of things, family members, things like that. But the moment she decided to give up all of this and just focus on cultivating her mind, all her worries are gone, of course. Her mind is no more focused on the negative. Her mind is constantly focusing on the positive. And so, positive mind, positive emotion, positive body. The body heals itself. So the mind heals the body. Just like the lady with asthma. The moment all her emotional conflicts and all her mental conflicts are removed, the asthma disappeared. And that's what we call a miracle. And there's another story of a doctor who had cancer. This doctor had a cancer 6 months after his son passed away. And his son passed away because that day he wanted to drive. I think the son was about 16 or 18 years old, just old enough to drive a car. And the father said, okay, take my car. So he drove. And he was involved in an accident and he died. Of course, the father blamed himself to have allowed the son to drive his car. It was a simple, at that time when he made the decision, it was a simple decision. After all, my son can drive. He wants to go out, I let him use my car. You won't imagine something terrible could happen. But it did, and the son died in the accident. And he felt guilty. 6 months after that, he was diagnosed of having a cancer. Now, I tell you these stories not to say that if you do have a cancer or if you have an illness, if you do the same thing that these people do, you don't have to listen to the doctor and you can throw away all your medicine. No, okay. Please do consult your doctor. Don't just do things on your own, okay? But you can do this together, okay? So this doctor, 6 months later, he had a cancer. Being a doctor, he has a lot of doctor friends, of course, and they treated him with chemotherapy, radiotherapy, injections, whatever, all the best medicine for him. Still, the cancer won't go away. In his desperation, he also seek alternative treatment. And now, why I say desperation? Because when you are dying, you're desperate when there's no cure. Okay? And why I say desperate is that doctors, especially Western doctors, they are the last person to adopt alternative medicine. So for him to finally say, okay, I will try alternative medicine, must be very desperate. Okay? But there are doctors who are very open-minded to all kinds of possibilities. And alternative medicine should not be totally excluded. All right. But in this case, he tried, and he tried all kinds alternative medicine as well. Also, it didn't cure him. Until one day he came across a program. This is a Western doctors in the Western world. He came across a program of forgiving. It was a program that teach you how to forgive. I think a 1 week program or something like that. In the West, they have a lot of these kind of programs, very good actually. Anyway, he joined the program. And in that program, he realized that he has a lot of guilt and anger and a lot of blame as well. Because partially he blamed himself, but in some part, at a different level, he also blamed his son. Why did you do it? Why did you decide to drive on that day? And why did you have to ask me? Sometimes we do that. Although we take the blame, we also blame others. Because it's always easy to blame somebody. Right? So he finds that there is a lot of conflicts, emotional conflicts within him, mental and emotional conflicts. And in that 7-day forgiveness program, he realized that, I actually do have all kinds of guilt in my mind, all kinds of blame and whatnot, all the negative emotions. And in that program, they taught him how to recognize it and how to release it. After the program, he continued to practice that. And the program also introduced him to meditation, so he also did some meditation. But he realized that he needed to work on removing all his guilt. He needs to forgive himself. He needs to forgive his son. He needs to forgive the other driver who knocked into the son. He needs to forgive everything about the situation. And again, after many months of doing all this, one day he went back for his follow-up in the oncology clinic, the cancer clinic. And his good friend, the oncologist, says, "Hey, where's your cancer?" Gone. The cancer was gone. Right. So this is another exceptional case of how a person can heal himself or herself just by clearing all the mental and emotional blocks. Mental and emotional. Starts with the mind. Once you start with the mind, the emotion will clear itself, and then the body will eventually clear itself. It may take a lot of time, but the good news is that even if you have started with your mind and you have relieved a lot of negative energy, but your body is still not healed, even so you would still have benefited. At least the disease would not have seemed so serious, so unacceptable, so painful. It will become more bearable. Okay? And the other benefit is, of course, if you did die of that disease, eventually, at least you would have a purer mind. That means that you will probably be able to die more gracefully, more dignified, without so much fear. Okay? And that itself is worth it, even if nothing else works. Okay? There's a lot of fear of dying. There's a lot of fear of dying. I see that in a lot of patients. Okay? So that is it. Let me take a sip of water. So, before I end, 5 minutes, enough to teach you a method on how to transform your emotion, the art of emotional transformation. This one I learned from an author, a Western author. He's not a Buddhist, but his method is very Buddhistic. So I like it very much, and it's very simple. 8 simple steps to emotional transformation. The name of the author is Christopher Vestra, Vestra, Vestra. And the book he wrote is called I Create Joy, the art of emotional transformation. It's an e-book. Anyway, he outlined 8 steps to transforming your emotion, any kind of emotion, to a state of joy. The first step is that you must accept responsibility. You must always accept responsibility for your emotion. Why? Because your emotion is your own creation, not somebody else's. Nobody makes you angry. You created it yourself. The trigger may have been from somebody else, but you always have a choice how you want to react. And in that instance, you have chosen to react angrily. So it is your choice, it is your creation. So start by accepting responsibility for your emotion. Then the second step is to name your emotion. Why do you want to give a name to your emotion? Very simple. The moment you are able to name the emotion accurately, you have clarity, you have awareness, you are conscious of the emotion. Okay, so naming the emotion gives clarity and awareness to your emotion. And you will find, if you have never tried this before, that most of us have very limited vocabulary when it comes to describing emotion. Happy, sad, angry, that's about all. But there are a lot of very subtle emotional labels and description as well. So the more you practice this, you will find that you will learn more and more emotional words. Basically, it's a way to improve your EQ, emotional quotients. Now there are a lot of people who specializes in teaching you EQ. Very good program. So when you name your emotion, that's what you do. You become better at recognizing your emotion, you have more clarity, and you have more awareness about your emotion. That's step 2. Let me see, I can't remember. Okay, step 3, letting go of the story. What does he mean by letting go of the story? The story is what happens outside that triggers off the emotion. And so, the story is something we always blame on. This and this event happened, that's why I became angry, or that's why I became sad, or that's why I became frustrated, because this and this happened. That is the story outside. On the outside, it looks like there's a story. But in actual fact, from the first step, we know that we create our own emotion. We decide how to respond to it. So basically, don't blame the story. So let go of that story. Let go of the triggers or the person who actually trigger off the emotion. In fact, use our emotion as our teachers. Our emotions are our best teachers. If you have an emotion, a negative emotion, and you look deeply into it, you will find a lesson there. And usually it will lead you to a belief that has been conditioning you to behave in the same manner all the time. So let go of the story. Let go of blaming. Don't blame, don't judge. Let go. Right? And the 4th is bless your emotion. Bless your emotion means be grateful for your emotion. Be thankful for your emotion. Why? Like I say, your emotion is your best teacher. When you look at your emotion as a teacher, then you can see that it is a gift to you. There is a lesson in there for you. And when you bless it, then you open your mind to possibilities. If you keep blaming others and if you keep resisting accepting responsibility for your emotion, you will never look inward. You will never look to try to find out what is the belief that is causing this emotion. Then step 5, feel your emotion. Meaning you allow yourself to release the energy associated with the emotion. If there's a lot of anger, just feel it and say, okay, I'm experiencing anger. There's a lot of mindfulness you need to have here. Most people can't do this. So that's why meditation is very useful. It increases your awareness and mindfulness so that this kind of steps becomes easier for you. If you don't have the kind of mindfulness or awareness, going through this step can be very difficult. So the first thing to do is to train your mind to be mindful. But once you are able to be mindful, then these steps becomes very logical. Feel the emotion because you don't want to resist the emotion. If you resist, it persists, it stays on longer and becomes a block, remains there. If you allow yourself to experience it in a positive way, in a conscious way, then you don't cause too much damage. And once the energy is released, you let it go. You don't cling on to it anymore. Okay? So feel your emotion and let it go. Then, step number 6, ask for clarity. Ask for the lesson. Ask for clarity. Is there a lesson for me here? Number 7, identify the belief behind your emotion. Like I said, behind every emotion, there is a false belief or there is a self-limiting belief, a belief that is not working well for you. You want to change that. So step number 7 is to identify that belief, and step number 8 is to replace that belief with a newer belief, a more effective belief, a more wholesome or skillful beliefs. That's what the Buddha used. The word that the Buddha used is skillful. The Buddha never said this is good, this is bad, but this is more skillful, because using this you get the desired effect. This is not so skillful because you want to continue to stay on to this belief, the effect is not what you want. So it's not a skillful way of keeping the belief. So you want to discard all the unskillful or ineffective beliefs and replace them with more positive and more effective beliefs. Okay? So those are the 8 steps. Accept responsibility for your emotion, name your emotion, let go of the story, bless your emotion, feel your emotion, ask for clarity, identify your belief, and replace that belief finally. And when you do that, you would have replaced the imprint in your mind that has been playing your life all the while, like an old broken records. Now you have more awareness, you have better control. You can choose what you want to believe. Okay? When you choose the right thing to believe in, when you choose the right thing to focus on, then you get what you want. Right? Now, before I end, I must emphasize that there are a lot of people who says, you know, Dr. Ong, I have this patient actually who says, Dr. Ong, she had cancer, she had breast cancer. The breast cancer has been removed, and she was living a very strict diet, and she exercises every day, and yet the cancer recur. And she said, Dr. Ong, I have done all that is necessary to lead a healthy life. How come I still get my cancer? I say, what did you focus on? Did you focus on your illness? Did you focus on the fear of getting the recurrence? Or did you focus on just being healthy? There is a big difference. Because whatever you focus on, you get it. If you are looking after the food that you take and doing your exercise, because the thing that motivates you is that I'm afraid I will get the recurrence, I'm afraid I'll get the recurrence. That is what you focus on. That is what you will get. On the other hand, if you choose what you eat nicely and you exercise regularly, and the focus is, this is going to give me a healthy body, this is going to give me a healthy body, this is going to give you a healthy body, then eventually this is what you will get. Externally, the habit is the same, but the mindset is different inside. And that makes a lot of difference. That makes a major difference to the outcome. Okay, so you also must know how to focus. Never focus on the negative, because whatever you focus on, it will come to you. If you focus on the negative will come. So you focus on the positive, and you focus only on the positive. Each time you catch yourself focusing on the negative, change that to something positive. Instead of saying, I don't want to be sick, you should be saying, I want to be healthy, and you should imagine yourself being in good health. That's the difference in the focus. Okay, the reason why I say I need to say this is because it makes a big difference. If you know it, then you can do something about it. Okay, so I hope that now you have a clearer understanding of how the Buddha's teaching has actually showed us that if you want to live a healthy life, if you want to be free from sickness, start with your mind. Purify your mind. Keep your mind in a positive state of mind, of health. Okay? With that, I thank you for your patience. I thank you for your attention. Sadhu.